Elliot Ditmars, Salamander Consultant. Alice is brave. She just walked up to him and did it. Later, Alice couldn't explain it, even to herself. She was usually super reserved, almost to the point of shyness. It was very much out of character for her to just walk up to a stranger, much less a man, and start talking to him right in the middle of the plant nursery. In her defense, he was extremely attractive, nerdy, handsome, in a tropical shirt covered with salamanders. Upon reflection, it might have been the salamanders that did it. As it happened, Alice knew a joke about a salamander. She would be the first to admit that it wasn't a good joke, but what were the odds? A cute guy holding a houseplant shows up wearing a salamander shirt. That's when Alice did the bravest thing she'd ever done. With no preamble, she walked up to the salamander man, and while he paused in utter surprise, she launched into her joke. So this guy walks into a bar with a giant salamander on his shoulder. Huge, like the size of a loaf of bread. And he says, "Hi," to the bartender. "I'll have whatever's on tap, and do you think you could find a piece of fruit for Tiny here?" And the bartender just looks confused and says, "Tiny?" The man replies, "Yes, he's minute." Alice finished her joke and kept eye contact with the guy in the salamander shirt. He stared into her eyes for something like 10 full seconds, then broke into a huge smile. "That is the funniest joke I've ever heard," he told Alice. "Will you please marry me?" This, in turn, made Alice smile so hard it actually hurt her face. She couldn't have said why. That was such an unexpected thing for him to say that it should have been at least a little creepy. But Alice just smiled, as happy as she could ever remember being in her life. "I don't know your name," she told the man in the salamander shirt. "I think we need to know each other's names to say vows and fill out a license and stuff." This struck her as a very good point, and the salamander guy must have agreed, because he broke out of his hypnotized eye contact and rummaged around in his pockets for a moment, then finally pulled out a battered business card and presented it to her. It read, "Elliot Ditmars, Salamander Consultant." "A salamander consultant?" Alice asked. "Really?" He rubbed the back of his neck as if he was slightly embarrassed, but returned to making eye contact with her. Alice got the feeling that his telling her this was some sort of test. Then Alice said the 4 words that changed the course of her life. "Tell me about it." Elliot, it turned out, had discovered a sudden passion for salamanders a few years ago, switched his major from ancient history, big fan of the Sumerians, he told Alice, to biology, and then plowed through his master's studies in herpetology, and now he was about a month away from defending his thesis for his doctorate. Alice had never been so impressed in her life, and it must have shown on her face or something, because Elliot's shoulders relaxed, and some tension he'd been hiding in his face seemed to drain away. The 2 young people stood in silence for a moment, smiling softly to each other. "Tell me the title," Alice finally said. Elliot took a breath. "Variations in Group Social Dynamics in Populations of Diurnal Salamanders in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina as they relate to changing weather patterns due to climate change." He managed to get his thesis out in one breath, and then stood watching Alice a little apprehensively, waiting to see her response. A brilliant smile grew on Alice's face. Then she pulled up one of her shirt sleeves, revealing a tattoo of an axolotl. "Why don't you pay for your plants?" she suggested to a semi-flabbergasted Elliot. "I have someone I want you to meet." Elliot liked Alice's apartment very much. It was decorated with 2 of his favorite things, jazz posters and too many houseplants. He craned his neck as he walked in, while Alice took her key out of the lock and shut the door. "What do you think?" she asked. It was clear to Elliot that she was proud of the space. "I think it says a lot about you," he told her. "Plants and jazz both involve a lot of thinking." "Overthinking in my case," Alice said, smiling. "But do you like it?" "I could live here," Elliot said. Alice's eyes lit up, and she was almost paralyzed for a second or two before she shook herself and remembered why she brought Elliot here. One of the reasons why she'd brought him here. Yes, definitely, the main reason why she'd brought him here. "Okay," she told Elliot. "Close your eyes." Given that he had known Alice for something like 45 minutes, Elliot surprised himself by doing so. He heard what sounded like Alice pulling a piece of furniture into the middle of the room, then the sound of sloshing water, then a sound he knew very well, the sound of somebody scooping something up in a small net and transferring it to a tank of water with a plop. "Okay," Alice said slightly breathlessly. "You can open your eyes." Elliot did, and a grinning Alice stepped to one side and indicated a small tank of water with a gesture, like a game show spokesmodel. "This," she said, "is Bob." Floating in a tank much too small for it was an annoyed-looking axolotl. Elliot's heart nearly stopped. How did you and Bob?" Here he hesitated slightly. "Get together?" "A friend of mine ended up with him after a breakup with a biology grad student, much like yourself," she said. "Supposedly he was bred in a facility in Austria or something. We've been together a little over a year now. He hasn't seemed happy lately, though. He's healthy and everything, but he's been a little mopey for the past couple of weeks." Elliot looked at the much too small tank and started to say something, but Alice interrupted him. "This is just a display tank," she said. "His main tank is over there." She indicated the far corner of her apartment near the bed. Almost completely hidden by tropical foliage, Elliot saw a proper 50-gallon tank. He turned to Alice, who couldn't help but notice for the 100th time was really pretty, and gave her a teasing smile. "And you'd like me to give you some pro bono salamander consultation, I take it?" Alice smiled and curtsied slightly. "If you would, please." Elliot stepped up to the tank and gazed intently at the giant salamander for a full minute or so, then looked down into the tank from the open top and spoke loudly, calling down to the axolotl. "Tlake amo kuali no siua kini." The effect was immediate. The salamander started wriggling excitedly and swam as much as it could from one corner of the tiny tank to the other, emitting a small cloud of bubbles. Elliot grunted softly, then stood back upright. "Yeah," he muttered. "That makes sense." Alice didn't know where to begin to process this, so she just asked, "What?" Elliot said, collecting his thoughts. "I'm trying to figure out how to explain this." "Just tell me," Alice said impatiently. "Okay. First of all, her name is Siua Pilton. It means princess, which explains why she's been in such a snit lately. Bob seems super disrespectful to her, and she says she's lost her patience with you." A wide-eyed Alice stood in silence for a moment, trying to take it all in. "Okay, so should I call her Siu, whatever you just said?" Elliot nodded and grunted in an affirmative. "Siua Pilton. Yeah, that. I don't think I can say that. Can I call her Soupy?" Elliot bent over the tank again and said something in an ancient language that Alice subsequently learned was Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs. Siua Pilton paused briefly, then wriggled for a second or two. "She says that will be acceptable," Elliot translated. Alice nodded, still trying to process this. "Anything else?" "Well," Elliot said, rubbing the back of his neck again, "this is the tricky bit. She's being a little princessy." Alice sighed. "Let me have it," she said. "She's displeased with the flavor of the water," he told Alice. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "But," she started. "No," Elliot interrupted. "The water's fine. She's being a bit of a prima donna. She wants us to know." At the word us, Alice's heart leapt a little, knowing that she and Elliot were now in us. "She wants us to know that she wasn't bred in any European laboratory. She's actually wild-born. And she says that your water doesn't taste dirty enough. You know that the lake around Mexico City is super polluted, right?" Alice nodded. "Anyway, Her Highness says she misses the taste of mud and heavy metal residue. Never mind that she doesn't actually have any memory of that. She's been in captivity since she was an eft. If she ever actually tasted Mexico City lake water, she'd gag and throw a conniption. So what do I need to do? Alice asked. Nothing. Keep doing what you've been doing. She's in great shape, by the way. Just call her Soupy and maybe bow once in a while when you feed her. She'll get over herself. Alice stood in silence for a moment, looking Elliot over, up and down, as if evaluating him. Yes, she said finally. Yes what? Elliot asked. Yes, I'll marry you. This, appropriately enough, is called the Salamander. And it's got a few more ingredients than we're used to. But we're going to start with 2 frozen strawberries. And the reason why it's good to start with frozen is as we muddle them, the frozen ones are going to just kind of break into a powder which dissolves into a strawberry mush. Fresh strawberries have a little more self-respect. They hold on to their integrity a little more, which is not what we want for this. We want something that's going to submit to our will. Okay. You can see how it just glops onto the muddler. Then we're going to add 2 ounces of jalapeno infused tequila. I like Tanteo, and it's a nice enough tequila, but that kick of jalapeno, it's good. It sets off the strawberry. Okay, now this is called a dry shake. We do it without ice because the alcohol will strip away some of the color and the flavor from the strawberry carcasses. And now we're going to add 1.5 ounces of pineapple juice. I feel like pineapple juice is an omen, a harbinger of good things to come. Start off your afternoon with some pineapple juice, your day's going to get better. And of course, with the sweetness of the pineapple juice, we want to set that off with everyone's ally, everyone's best friend in a cocktail, fresh squeezed lime juice. And we're looking for 3/4 ounce. It's probably going to be a little bit more than half a lime. But I always like to throw a little bit of the lime carcass into the shaker. I don't know that it actually adds anything to the drink, but who am I to say? Okay, and yeah, there we go. And as always, protecting against scurvy. So there is our 3/4 ounce of fresh squeezed lime juice. And finally, well, not finally, but finally before we shake, is just a dash of cardamom bitters. Cardamom's one of those flavors that, if you're not super familiar with it, you're like, this is really good. Where have I had this before? Anyway, we're just adding a hint of mystery to this already admittedly mysterious drink. Anyway, so we're putting ice into the shaker and fresh ice into a rocks glass. And as always, trying to find that perfect shake where you hear the ice start to break up into little shards. Okay, breaking the seal. And straining our pink drink over the fresh ice. And look at that. Am I good? I'm good. Okay, and finally, we're going with some ginger beer. Not ginger ale, which is fine, but ginger beer, which has more of a spicy bite. And this particular one has been sitting around for a little while, so I needed to shake up a little bit to get some of the sediment off the bottom. But we're going to add 1.5 ounces of the ginger beer. And then stir everything gently. Gently so that you keep some of the effervescence from the ginger beer. Okay, it's beautiful, pinkish color. Oh yeah, that's really nice. And as you look at it, you can see little pieces of strawberry floating around. It's like a lava lamp of positivity. Each little fragment goes, "You're so cool," as it swims around like a happy salamander.